a lot of myth and rituals were developed. In point of fact, myths are necessary to the maintenance of the patterns of group life. Now, as I shared with you Tuesday, when you hear that word myth, don't think in terms of fable or something that's made up. These myths are grounded in reality. There is substance to them. They are often narrative stories based on a real event. But myth had other important roles. It helped explain creation. It helped explain the origin of man. It helped explain the way things are in the world. When we think of myth from their point of view, we should never think of it as idle fantasy, but as a perpetuation of revelation. Magic also played a significant role in prehistoric and even later religious cultures. It endeavors through an utterance of set words or the performance of set acts, or both, to bend the powers of the world and the sacred to one's benefit. Now, when you and I today think of magic, we think of a magician and his sleight of hand, or we think of illusions. But in primitive religions, the term magic takes on a far more serious meaning. Probably the most common form of magic among primitive societies is sympathetic or imitative magic. In this form, one attempts to coerce nature into some act by performing that act itself, but on a smaller scale. For example, like the rain dance. And another example is what we, for lack of a better term, would call the voodoo doll, in which a magician seeks to do evil to an enemy or to a rival. Another aspect of magic in primitive religion is the fetish. A fetish is any object used to control nature or events in a magical fashion. Do we have fetishes today? Name some. If you're Irish, Kelly, what's your fetish?
The shamrock stone.
Well, that's what you want to kiss, but the shamrock, four-leaf clover. I've looked and looked and have yet to find one. The what? Mm-hmm. What's some other fetishes? Crystal, okay. And you see them hanging from rear-view mirrors all the time.
Rabbit's feet.
Rabbit's feet. Or you see them on dashes of cars. Is it St. Jude? No. The little saint that you put there, to protect you. We have fetishes today, so this is nothing, that's passed away.
Would dream catchers fall into that criteria?
Sure. Dream catchers, and then among the Navajo, it's what is called the Ojo de Dios, the Eye of God. That is a fetish. The medicine wheel? Mm-hmm. A lot of times we wear that cross. Some know the real meaning of it and why they're wearing it. Others, it's just a good luck charm. That's the definition of a fetish, a good luck charm. Luck, not look. Okay. For the possessor, the fetish is used to bring good fortune and to ward off evil. Among Native Americans, they have what's called the medicine bag that they always carry with them. And inside that medicine bag are little items known only to the bearer of the bag. But they're deemed to be very, very important to that individual. And they take more care of that medicine bag than they do their own spouse. And the fetish could be anything. It could be a wooden stick. It could be a stone or a collection of stones like you see here. It could be a bone, a feather, or a special weapon. It could just be anything that's important to the bearer of that fetish. Fetishes can be held singly or collectively, or they may be used as ornamentation of some kind. Most often, the one most adept in applying magic was the tribal shaman or medicine man. And the shaman could be male or female. Ladies, you cannot be priests today, but back then you could be a priest. So the shaman, one's sex was not an issue. What the issue was one's ability to contact the holy, to work on the benefit of the people. The shaman was believed to be possessed by the spirits, and so served as a mediator between the sacred and the people. Well, separate from but very closely akin was the, whoops, went one too far, was the concept of prayer. Now, it seems highly unlikely, and again, this is speculation, that prehistoric men would have individually or spontaneously prayed. It is more likely that ritualistic prayers were developed and they were passed from generation to generation to be repeated word for word without the slightest error. Formal prayers generally contain the elements of adoration, confession of wrongdoing, the promise of atonement, thanksgiving and grateful recognition of past favors, and supplications or petitions for a specific blessing. Divination is another common characteristic of primitive religion, mainly used to predict the future. Divination is accomplished through a variety of means. Just to name a few: examining the entrails of a sacrificial animal, observing the flights of birds, or casting sacred dice, to name a few. Interesting statement in the Old Testament. Do you know what, or ever heard the terms the Urim and Thummim? You know what those are? Okay. On the breastplate of the high priest in Judaism were two stones called the Urim and the Thummim, and they were removable. And these stones were used to cast lots many times. And there's an interesting little story in the book of Samuel. David is wondering whether or not he should take a particular course of action. And he calls in the high priest and borrows his Urim and Thummim and throws them on the floor, and they come up, yes! So off he goes. So that is a form of divination. Now, this next term, belief in mana, that is a Melanesian term, and it's been adopted by anthropologists as representative of a widespread belief of an unidentifiable force or an indwelling power that is distinct from either persons or spirits. And it references the experience of a powerful but silent force in things or in persons. And it's a force that's thought to be transmittable from objects in nature to humans, and from one person to another, or from person to things. This is what Obi-Wan meant when he said to Luke, "May the force be with you." Then there is animism. And animism is the belief that the whole of nature is alive with spirits, and that these spirits have feelings, and that they can be communicated with. Thus animals, trees, stones, rivers, mountains, the heavenly bodies, the seas, the earth itself have anima, or soul. It's believed that these spirits can communicate, that they can be flattered or offended, that they can either help or hurt humans. Another common characteristic is that of veneration and worship of powers. And this is rooted in animism. For truly, people have worshipped everything that they could think of beneath the earth, upon the earth, between the earth and heaven, and beyond the heavens themselves. We have made everything an object of worship at one time or another. In regards to the recognition of a supreme being, it is highly questionable whether primal people were cognizant of a supreme being. It is possible that they may have recognized the existence of a deity far up in the sky or at a great distance, perhaps who created everything and at a distance oversees all that goes on. But it's most probable that such a supreme being, at least from their perspective, did not evoke a religious response comparable to the intensity that familiar spirits and powers encountered on a daily basis. If they acknowledge a supreme being, it's just someone way off there, but the river god is here, or the spirit of the tree is here, whatever. Does that make sense? Well, maybe I better restate it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know if it makes sense or not. So they would, again, this is speculative on our part. We just don't know. We do know this, that taboo played a great deal in primal religions. And taboos are prohibitions applied to many things, persons or actions, because they're considered sacred or dangerous or socially forbidden. Can you think of any taboos today? And we still have them.
Well, I can think of one probably like in the back, maybe the Ark of the Covenant.
Do what?
The Ark of the Covenant.
Okay, what about it?
Wouldn't that be considered? I mean, it doesn't exist, but wouldn't it be considered a taboo?
Well, it was taboo for anyone but a priest to touch the Ark of the Covenant. There's a neat story in 1 Samuel. No, it's 2 Samuel, I'm sorry. The Ark of the Covenant has been in a place called Shiloh. And David wants to move it from Shiloh to Jerusalem. And so he sends some men to get it. They're not priests. They're well-intentioned men, and they load it on a cart. And as they're trucking it down the road, it starts to tip off, and one of the men, to keep the ark from hitting the ground, reaches up and touches it, and then immediately is killed. And so they park it where it is. It doesn't go any further. And David goes and consults to find out what has gone wrong here, and he learns, well, I was a little capricious in my actions. I need to send priests. They need to use poles made of gopher wood, run through the rungs of the covenant, Ark of the Covenant, and carry it on their shoulders, not on a cart. So yes, it was taboo, forbidden to touch.
Consider
That is taboo. Yes,
We're going through more modern.
Sayana, right?
Sayana.
Sayana, okay.
Like, that new thing, that branding that you do to yourself, like you go get branded with a little, like, it's like a tattoo, but it's not a tattoo.
that they use.
Yeah, like they brand you, and they leave like designs and stuff in you, and they do it.
And that's taboo?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Huh?
Yeah, wouldn't it be?
Marks your body. I mean,
Yeah,
could
it's
you-
like-
Is there an ordinance against, see, that's what taboo
Well,
is.
it's in Canada, it's not allowed here yet.
Okay, so here it's taboo,
Yeah.
it's forbidden, okay. Listen, we have so many taboos around that we break every day. It's taboo to go over the speed limit. How many of you do? Yes.
I think mine's a little bit more of a social issue, but like speaking negative of the dead, like
Okay.
speaking bad about them.
Uh-huh. And we're gonna come across that.
Oh, it's 9, sorry, it's, you got 5 minutes left.
Okay, I need to,
I meant to say 10:40.
Let me get through this, and you'll be on your way. Closely tied to taboo was the need for purification rites. Obviously, people are going to slip up and break a taboo, and at that point, they're considered unclean or ostracized. And, a couple of things. Either they're going to be sentenced to death, or they need to be purified, ritually cleansed. So the very existence of taboos indicates that a taboo breaker needs some means or some method to escape the consequences of the broken taboo. So they had purification rites. Some of these use water, some of these use smoke, some of these use sand. They run the gamut of how one became clean again. Purification was also seen as necessary in the event of a birth or death or contact with another polluted person. It was also a means that one used to prepare themselves to enter the presence of the holy. Sacrifice and gifts usually entail the giving up or destroying of something in the hope of pleasing or appeasing the spirits. And the simplest form of sacrifice is giving gifts, things of value. But it also can be as radical as requiring animal or human sacrifice. Then there was the attitudes toward the dead. And that's still an important characteristic, not only of primitive, but even modern religion. Our ancient forebears feared the dead, and they developed measures of security against troublesome and meddlesome interference from the dead. So a lot of times they would pile huge stones over the grave to lock the dead in. Or they would tie them with stout cords so that they could not escape and wrap them in cloths. In some rare instances, they would drive a wooden stake through the chest and pin them to the ground. I mean, this dude isn't going to be walking around my camp tonight. At the same time, offerings were left in the burial place to keep the dead satisfied and content. And folks, many of these customs still survive today. And finally, last but not least, is totemism. And totemism is based on the feeling of kinship that humans have for other creatures or objects in nature.
Native Americans have that a lot, don't they?
Do what?
The Native Americans, is that a
Oh,
lot?
yes. Oh,
That
yes.
have been like Alaska, had a lot of.
And as such, it's an extension and an expression of animism. Generally involves some sort of or form of identification between a tribe or clan and an animal. Although totems in some parts of the world are identified as plants or trees or even the sun, the moon, the stars. So that's chapter 1. There's some case studies in chapter 1 that you need to read on some specific tribes and cultures. I encourage you to do that. You may see that information on the exam. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Yes, Daniel. What?
Just with your series online or what?
No, they're in your book.
At the end of the chapters on the police, the Linda, and Sorry.
Sorry, what's that?
Jeff, next one. Before common and it's no longer
Let's go back to work.
Actually, in my opinion, it's R-R-O-R. It's not careless to take the more out of it. We didn't start it. Okay? That's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Okay, have a great day.
Okay, Dr. So I have to ask a question.
All right.
I was raised pagan, so I have like no knowledge about Christian belief.
Uh-huh.
Why do the way of the cross?
Do what?
Why do you do the cross?
I don't. Some do, as a means of identification, to say, I am affiliated or I am a Christian. That's the most common reason. Others wear it as a source of jewelry, ornamentation. There's no real concept of what it means. It just looks good. And others wear it as a good look charm. Thinking as long as they've got the cross, they can't be, vampire won't attack them or whatever. Okay? Are you still a pagan? Are you still a pagan? Okay. Maybe we can change that.
I just said we need to work on that. I'm just messing with you.
All right, have a great day.
I do have one question for you.
All right.
Something, well, I think one of the definitions. I was taught something else in my psychology class, but I didn't want to ask you some other ones.
That's fine.
Question, but, you said animism.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what I learned, that you were describing more like personification, like personifying like a god of the trees and giving it a personality or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where,
That's animism.
I don't know, they seem to go real close, but I just wasn't.
They are.
I just wasn't for. I guess maybe it was just my understanding of that messed up.
You didn't listen real well that day in class.
Yeah, no, well, no, because it was like, I know that the two go almost hand in hand, you know what I mean, but.
I have a question. Since I can't very I can't hear things before the teacher or what text where we like. I can read it, I'll read two, and then like next Tuesday we're gonna go over it. Is there something else I should read?
Yes, chapter 3.
Okay, so just read, so read chapter 3, and